This is the first in a series of interviews with researchers who are studying electric weeding as part of a NIFA OREI-funded multi-state project called Performance and Economics of Electric Weed Control in Organic Perennial Crops. I'm Alice Formiga of eOrganic, based at Oregon State University, and along with my colleague, Linda Brewer, we're talking today with Luisa Bassin, who is a PhD student in the lab of Project Director Marcelo Moretti here at Oregon State University. Luisa recently won first prize in the student contest at the Western Society of Weed Science for her presentation, so we asked her to tell us about the first year of her research on electric weed control in blueberries.
Okay, so last week we attended the WSWS annual meeting, the meeting for the Western Weed Science Society. And for my oral presentation, my paper, it was about crop safety and weed control for the electrical weed control project that we have in organic blueberry. So I presented a little bit about blueberry production here in the Pacific Northwest. Then I explained how the electrical weed control works. And for our experiments, we were evaluating crop safety. So taking some measurements on the growth of the plants, of the blueberry plants. We took some soil health data and weed control data as well. So what I was presenting in the conference is that our results are really good, actually. We have pretty good weed control data with the electrical weeder. The electrical weeder for the first year did not damage the blueberries, so we didn't see any impact on the growth of the blueberries due to the electricity treatment. And it also did not negatively impact soil health. So for this first year, the experiment showed that it's safe for the soil health, especially focusing on the microbes of the soil. I show a video of the equipment running in the field.
What are you measuring when you measure soil health?
So we took some soil samples and we sent the samples to OSU lab. We are recording physical and chemical properties of the soil and biological indicators. So between this in these biological indicators, we are measuring the CO2 that the microbes release.
Okay, so respiration, huh?
Respiration, calculated microbial biomass. We are measuring carbon in the soil and one activity of enzyme that is related to the microbials.
Great, thank you.
Here's the title of my presentation, Crop Safety and Weed Control in Organic Weed Highbush Blueberries Using Electrical Weeding. So I talked about the blueberries production, electrical weed control, and then stated the objectives, material methods, results, and conclusion for our research. And basically what I explained is that the Highbush blueberries, they are a key crop in the Pacific Northwest agriculture, and they are the 10th most valuable commodity we have in the state of Oregon. And since the preference for the consumer is changing, looking for a pesticide-free type of fruit, the demand for organic blueberries is also increasing. And in the blueberry farming, mulches are the most used form of weed control. And these mulches, they could be organic, such as sawdust, but also a plastic mat is usually used in the field. However, the use of the plastic mat will have an increase of the cost of the operation because the installation and the maintenance of the plastic is expensive, and it also requires more labor. And regarding the weed management strategies that we have for the organic farming on blueberries, the physical control methods for the weeds are preferred, such as hand weeding or mowing. Some organic herbicides can be used as a supplementary measure of weed control, and usually the growers, they will grow cover crops in the intervals. However, none of these weed control methods, they have a really good control on the perennial weeds. That's why we looked for an alternative that is both cost-effective and that involves no tillage of the soil. And that's how we start looking at the electricity for these projects. And the way that the electrical weed control works is by applying the energy to the weeds. This energy will be converted to heat inside the plants, causing a disruption of the cell functions and leading to tissue damage. And the electricity, unlike, for example, the mechanical type of weed control, such as mowing, electricity has root effect. And here in the photo, we see how the equipment we used for this research works. So it needs a mechanical power, that is the tractor, number one. And then in the back of the tractor, we see there where we have the equipment attached by to the tractor by the PTO. And we have the transformer and the module where the current will be transformed. And then in front of the tractor, there is the applicator that will deliver this current to the weeds. This is the video I talked about. It shows the equipment running in the field over some Canada thistle. And then where you see my phone, I have a thermal camera attached that shows the heat inside the plants after we apply the electric current. So for this research, we had some hypotheses. First of all, we imagined that it would be safe for the crop because we don't have contact between the blueberries and the electrodes in the applicator. We also imagined that to be safe for the soil, having no alteration on soil health properties, especially on the microbes in the soil. And we expected a good weed control in a way that we could have an alternative to the use of the plastic mat. So for that, we evaluated crop safety and soil health parameters, and we also evaluated the weed control. So we established a Duke cultivar of blueberries in the research farm at Lewis Brown in an organic certified area in fall of 2022. And as the idea was to test the mulch types and the weed control strategies, we developed these treatments in a factorial way, where we tested the interaction between the mulch types, either bare ground, weed mat, or the sawdust, and also the weed control strategy, both 15 and 75 megajoules per hectare and mowing. The way we adjust the dose of the electricity is by adjusting the speed of operation of the tractor. And we also included a non-treated as our control or reference. So the combination of all these factors plus the control, total 10 treatments in the field. The electricity was generated by this power tractor electrical weeder, the same I'm showing the image. The applicator is 4 feet wide, and the area we treated is the area right next to the raised bed in the blueberries. For the weed mat plots, we treated next to the plastic, not on top of it. And then for bare ground and sawdust plots, we treated to the side of the raised bed area. We used a rotary mower for comparison, and we administered the electricity treatments 6 times between May and October last year. The field was in a RCPD with 4 applications, and each plot I had 10 blueberry plants. The evaluations on the blueberry included a non-destructive measurement of chlorophyll content. Some leaves were collected for nutrient analysis, and then I measured canopy and fruit bud set using the formulas I provided in the slides. I also measured the length of the shoots of the blueberries, and I visually estimate injury in the blueberry plants. For the soil, I collected soil from bare ground plots, recorded the moisture content on these samples, and these samples, they were kept in ice and then sent to the laboratory for a complete soil health analysis, including physical and chemical properties and the biological indicators. For the weed control part, I evaluated the efficacy of weed control always 28 days after each treatment. And I took photos of the ground, and then I submit those photos to a software that by recognizing the green area on the photo, will estimate a percentage for ground coverage. By the end of the season, I also collected biomass of the weeds, and then I dried this biomass. And also I counted the number of weed species present in each plot. For the statistical analysis, we used R, and the data was fitted into a linear mixed model with interaction as a fixed effect and block as a random effect. And we submitted the analysis to ANOVA and used 2K HSD test to compare the means. And what we saw for the results was that regarding crop safety, the electric treatment did not negatively impact the canopy volume, the length of the shoots, the fruit bud set, the chlorophyll content on the leaves, and also the leaf nutrient content of the leaves. the plants that were conducted in the synthetic mulch, for this type of mulch, the blueberry plants developed better. They were slightly bigger and more, the shoot length was also larger. But when we compare all the weed control strategies to our control, that in this case, the control means that we never remove the weeds from there, we see that there was up to 3 times larger canopy volume and also up to 1.5 times larger length of shoots. We didn't see any symptom of injury on our treatments, including the electricity treatments. And our non-treated plot, our control plot, where we didn't remove the weeds, the mortality for those plots was 28%. So this result shows us the importance of keeping the blueberry field, especially in this first year after establishment, free from the competition with weeds. Regarding the soil health, we saw that electricity did not differ from mowing for both physical, chemical, and biological indicators. And as I explained before, the biological indicators were this respiration, the CO2 release for respiration, the microbial biomass, active carbon or content of carbon in the soil, and also activity of an enzyme that is related to microbial activity. And then regarding weed control, we observed that electricity performed better than mowing in all types of mulches. And this result was also observed when we counted the number of species, since there was a great reduction on the number of species in the electrical weed control plots. In fact, for these plots that were treated with electricity, the only plants that survived these treatments were field bindweed and Canada thistle. But even though they survived, the weed control was way better compared to mowing. We observed the same results for ground coverage data and for the weed biomass data. So here I have photos I took in September last year after 5 applications of the electrical weed control in my high energy treatment. And we see the side of the raised beds is the area where we run with the equipment. And we see this area is free from weeds. Just one point I would like to point out is that the top of the raised bed, where we have the planting line, this is the area we don't reach with the equipment because we have to avoid the contact between the blueberries and the electrodes. This area we kept free from the weeds by hand weeding. So right after all my evaluations, we were hand weeding that part. And this was the first study of the electrical weed control effect on blueberries, and so far our results shows that the technology is safe for the crop. We didn't see negative impact on the soil health, and we also see that this technology is compatible with the mulching that is currently used for blueberry cultivation. So this great result we have on weed management suggests that this technology can be an alternative for the use of the plastic mat regarding the weed control. And it's important to state that this is non-selective. So everything that is touched by the electrodes will receive the electric current. So it's important not to touch the newly planted blueberries with the electrodes to avoid delivering energy to the crop. And this is the result of our first year. However, this is part of a long-term research, and we will keep evaluating the data over the years. So the electricity had no negative impact on the soil health or in the development of the blueberry plants. It did provide better weed control compared to mowing, with no distinction for those, which suggests us that this is a promising non-chemical option for weed control. And for future research, we are validating all this data in commercial fields. We have some trials in Independence, Oregon, in a commercial field of organic blueberries. And we are going to continue this study for productivity and also to evaluate the cost efficiency of these two.
So if I may ask a question, please, Luisa. You know, August can be very dry in Oregon, and I saw sparking as the equipment passed over the ground.
Yeah.
Is there any concern about fire,
Yes.
maybe with the sawdust or with dried plant
Mhm.
material?
Yes, there is a fires concern, especially not so much with the sawdust. I haven't seen any problems with the sawdust.
Okay.
It's not a problem. The problem is when we have dry weeds, especially dry grass weeds.
Ah,
Then that can be a problem because some of the sparks can
mhm,
set the weeds on fire. So a few
mhm.
times I had to step back and be like following the equipment to stop any sources of fire.
Okay,
So for the
okay.
dry season, yes. One thing is we are applying these so many times because one of the objectives of the research is to evaluate the crop and the soil. So
Mhm,
we are over applying. I would say
mhm,
that in a commercial set, there will be no need for applying that many times, especially because it's dry. The weeds
mhm.
won't be growing that much. So
Okay,
for many times we were applying just in the dry like soil. There was no weeds in the plots.
okay, okay,
But
good,
we for the
good.
research purpose we had to keep applying. But in a commercial area, probably there will be no need.
I also had a couple of questions. I was wondering, how well does this work when in wet weather?
If the soil is too wet, you won't want to operate a tractor in a really wet soil. So
Yeah.
that will be something to consider. But overall, what we see is that if the soil is too wet, the control will go will reduce a little bit. So at the beginning of the season, when the soil is still a little bit wet, we need more applications to
Mhm.
achieve a good control. And then as the soil gets more dry, we can control the weeds a little bit better. There is a relationship of the water content in the soil with the voltage and amperage. So maybe I can develop like something like that with Marcelo, talk a little bit about this, the relationships between that,
Mhm,
because that will guide how much energy is being applied to the weed and how fast that can dissipate into the soil if the soil has more or less water
mhm.
content.
Okay, and it doesn't electrocute earthworms or anything like that?
No, I haven't seen any effect on the worms. The photo I had in the soil slide, I took 2 hours after my treatment when I was collecting the soil samples.
Mhm.
However, it can affect other organisms that are on top of the soil because we saw one dead snake because
Oh,
it was
Yeah.
under the weeds.
okay,
We didn't see that. We're passing with the equipment,
okay.
but then after when hand weeding, we found that snake. So maybe if you have
Mhm,
other um, animals like that in the middle of the weeds,
Mhm.
mhm.
that can happen. Yes.
You
Yeah.
know, this would be an interesting technique. I think, am I correct, Louisa, in thinking that the reason that earthworms are not affected is because the electrodes don't touch them unless they're on the
Yes.
surface of the soil?
Yes,
So,
because
but,
probably the
mhm,
current that is flowing in the soil is
right,
not like directly being applied to the worms.
right.
So that's not affecting them, yeah.
And it didn't damage the weed mat at all.
So if you apply on top of the weed mat, yes, because that
Uh-huh.
heat will melt the plastic.
I see.
We
Yeah.
had another equipment that we were using in a commercial field, which is a smaller unit. That unit we were running on top of the plastic mat because the total power of the unit was less than this one we are using for this experiment. That one we could run on top of the plastic mat, but this one,
Mm,
if you run on
mhm.
top of the plastic mat, it will melt.
Maybe the sawdust doesn't catch fire because it compresses, you
Yeah,
know?
and I guess also you have irrigation line
Yep.
going below the sawdust, so you still have like even though it's dry, the soil outside or to the side of the raised bed is dry, the soil in that area is keeping like the sawdust is keeping the humidity there.
I think when Marcelo first bought this, we had a little conversation about, is there danger to workers in the
So
field?
yes, you should keep a safety distance from the equipment when it's running in the
Okay.
field.
Mhm,
If you have, especially if you have forgot the name of that, the metal thing in the heart, pacemaker.
Oh, sure. Okay, yes.
Yeah, so like
Pacemaker,
there
yes.
is
Oh, yeah.
there is
Oh,
certainly like
yes.
to avoid be around that.
Sure.
There is a slight risk of arcing the electricity.
Okay,
So
Mm.
yes.
we saw that in the field once. We used some metal clips to clip the weed mat, and then as passing next to it, we saw like electricity arcing. So if you have metal around,
Okay,
that's also something. But if you're not around, you shouldn't have many problems with
okay,
that.
good.
What we saw is that by arcing the electricity to the clip, it melted a little bit of the plastic mat because the
Uh-huh.
started like a little fire. The
Mm.
fire hazard, so something to consider too.
Mhm.
And you should have one trained people to operate the equipment. Here in our case, we only have one technician that runs the equipment, so he's the only one who took all the trainings and all of that. But probably when buying the machine, I believe the company provides all the training and the safety measures that you need to know. Yeah.
This is exciting work. Very
That's
exciting
cool.
work.
How much longer do you have, Luisa?
So I should be in this project for this year, this summer, and then I might graduate. But
Mhm.
Marcelo plans to keep this experiment going on for
Mhm.
a few years, especially because for yield data, we should wait a few years to start
Oh, okay,
measuring
yes.
yield of
I
these
was
plants.
going to ask you that about yield, but you didn't collect that data because these were new
No, they are
plants.
too young, so I
Okay.
prune these plants not to produce any flower or fruits.
Okay.
Because right now we have to focus in the vegetative growth of these plants. So for this year, we won't have yield data neither because we already pruned the flowers. So hopefully next year, if they have a good size, they can produce for the first time. But it will take at least 1 or 2 years so that we can reach the full production and then assess the effect on the production of the plants.
Right. Well, great. Okay, thanks
Great,
very much.
Yeah.
Okay. Have a
Great.
good
Thank you.
afternoon.
You
Bye-bye.
too.
Okay.
Bye.